That's a good joke. All right, let's get, this one will be good. Donald in Arizona. Hi, you're on Talk Heathen with Jamie and Andrew Seidel, who's here,
I'm
in the flesh.
Yeah, it's not a hologram.
How are you doing today, and what did you want to talk about?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, excellent. Very good. Well, it was suggested for me to call into the show and I guess chat it up with you guys. A friend of mine who'd been following me on social media for a few years now was kind of seeing some of the work I put out. I guess there's some doubt in coming from his end regarding who I am and what I claim to be. So
doubt is a good thing.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, doubt is a good thing. Doubt is excellent. It's
and an
actually
excellent
an excellent
play.
thing.
But what is it that you have a significant amount of doubt in?
I think he's being
an
doubted.
avatar. Oddly enough, I am something called an avatar. So,
wait, like from the James Cameron movie?
Or from the
that'd be so much better. No, I'm
from the
avatar.
anime.
So easy way to say it, like, the only reason I called in here is to sort of switch the framing on how you all have been approaching the concept of God, and specifically to make differentiations between what God is and I guess how it's sort of presented through the religious frame.
Yeah.
And
so, Donald, what is God?
All right, God is basically the phenomenon humans refer to as reality. Reality is a living sentient being that life just happens to have, that life occurs within. We are structural building blocks belonging to a body. And, basically, how it's described in the Bible is very different than that.
I agree that the description in the Bible is very different than that. So when you say that we are physically part of a larger body, I'm assuming you don't mean the celestial body, soul-free Earth. You mean the universe, you said, is alive. Existence is alive.
Well, okay, no, the not existence either, okay? So again, you had to fix the framing, okay? So it's like basically reality is a living sentient being.
So reality is alive.
Reality is alive, yes.
Okay.
And it has a sense of agency and the whole shebang, but the universe is a body.
Okay, what led you to believe, so real quick, Donald, I don't mean to cut you off, but what led you to believe that the universe is alive? I'm sorry, that existence is a living body?
Reality.
Reality. I keep saying existence. Reality.
Okay, so check this out. I was an atheist for a good decade, man, and through no choice of my own and through no doing of my own and not under a state of inebriation or any sort of near-death experience or anything, I somehow wound up in the principal realm of existence. And there I met and communed with the thing that would rightfully be referred to as God. And no, I don't expect you to believe it, and I'm not trying to convince you of it. I'm just explaining how...
Donald, can I ask, where in relation to the reality as a living organism is the principal plane of existence?
The principal plane... Okay, so check it out. Look at it like this. So you have a body. You have a body, but then there are all sorts of rules and principles that sort of allow for automation for your body that you do not have physical access to. You can sort of hack them from the physical side, but you can't actually access them. You can't access the core set of principles that keep your cells bound together. You can't, not from this side of existence.
That's true. I cannot consciously influence not just the way in which atoms react that eventually, the physical laws of the universe, in the same way that there are many things performed by my subconscious that I can't influence. I don't consciously create, I'm not consciously metabolizing a breakfast taco right now. I'm unconsciously metabolizing a breakfast taco right now.
You're absolutely correct. So the principal realm is basically, it's like, okay, so put it like this. You have a physical body and then you have a principal expression that sort of automates shit from behind the scenes. Well, basically, when your body dies and sort of dematerializes and your building blocks are reabsorbed into the context from which you perform or in which you perform.
Do you mean my body decomposes, just to clarify?
Well, yeah, when your body decomposes, just like your body would be go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Just I hate to keep interrupting you, but I want to touch on some of the language that you're using to clarify. So you've said we have a principal expression that's doing stuff behind the scenes. Is there a distinction between what you're referring to as a principal expression and what I would call the subconscious mind?
Or just bodily processes?
I would say yes, in the sense that the mind is something that is the mind is something where thoughts occur. You have processes in your body that have absolutely nothing to do with your mental
so bodily processes.
work of any kind.
Bodily processes.
Yes.
So is there a supernatural quality to bodily processes that occur without my conscious direction?
It depends on how you give. It depends on what you call supernatural. I don't. Okay,
Outside
so
the laws
let's
of
do
nature.
something real quick.
Yeah. Outside the laws of nature. Outside the laws of nature. We'll go with Andrew's definition. Is there a quality of my bodily processes that are outside the laws of nature?
Or are your bodily processes just following the laws of nature?
Yeah. Eric would make a joke about me farting at this point if he was here. So I have to at least say that.
Well, I will say it like this. Look, so when you call what humans call laws of nature are things that we understand. They're meanings that we impose onto how we perceive reality through our experiential vantage point. So I don't know that I can necessarily I guess co-sign that statement exactly, but I will say it like this. If you're talking about, is there any sort of entity on the other side that's sort of manipulating effects and creating shit? Nah,
entity or unconscious force? So no supernatural quality to bodily processes?
No, there's nothing. No, there's nothing ethereal. There's nothing. It all fits within a specific frame. So it's like there's nothing like, there's nothing mystical or magical or anything like that. We may call it that because of how we perceive it on this side, but not. It's all mechanical. It's all biomechanical. It's all relational. So it's like
what is it that led you? So you've said that you communed with a thing that you call God, right?
Yeah,
in the principal realm of existence, I believe was the phrase.
In the principal realm.
In the principal realm.
Stupid, I know.
No. It sounds like many things I've read online.
And it sounds a lot to me like you're saying that the physical laws of the universe are God.
Well, I wouldn't call them physical laws of the universe.
Yeah, I know you would.
I'm saying the universe is a living organism. So put it like this. Okay, so there are two types of. I'm gonna keep using your body as an example. What you refer to as your body, your consciousness. So think about it like this: you are a collection of living building blocks. Your consciousness, your central consciousness, is God over your universe. You make decisions on behalf of the collection of organisms that you are comprised of. But in the same sense, you are not necessarily the reason. Like you don't have a one-on-one relationship with every fucking cell you're comprised of.
Accurate. Do you believe that reality has a relationship with large portions of its body?
In the same way that you have relationships with a relationship with your body. So put it like this: when your cells are suffering, you're suffering. When you're cold, when your cells are cold, you're cold. When your cells are hungry, you're hungry.
I mean,
we lose.
Well,
how many
that's just a description. So that it absolutely doesn't describe a relationship. You're using a slightly different descriptor for the same thing that we're talking about, and saying that when it is cold, it is cold. Do you mean that when I am cold, I feel cold?
When your cells are cold, you feel cold because
I tend to perceive that. True.
Yeah, well, collectively they make up you. So this is basically the point that I'm making. The framing is what's way off, and all the shit. The Bible defeats itself basically in the very first chapter. How it says the first that God divides.
Agreed. So we've left the. I mean. In defense of the Bible, a phrase I don't use often on this show, it's been translated and copied and miscopied and mistranslated enough times that you can't really blame the phrasing on even the original authors. You can blame the shittiness of the stories and the genocide on the authors, but the fact that it doesn't translate into modern English very well, I don't think you can blame significantly that ain't Jesus' fault.
I don't discount the entire Bible, but I will say this. I will say this. In the beginning, it says God created, there was a division between the light and the dark. God divided the light and called it day, and the dark and night. And then it's like a little bit later, he creates the sun, the moon, and the stars.
Yeah.
And,
we agree with you that,
we definitely
neither Genesis 1 nor Genesis 2 accurately describes this. So let's get back to the principal realm of existence and reality being God. So you've described reality, and I've been, corrected rightly when I've said existence when describing your position. Do you believe that there is a significant difference between those two things? When I say existence...
Yes.
Okay, what is the difference between existence and reality?
Okay, the difference between existence and reality. Let me see. I guess in my work, I kind of describe it as this. Reality is the frame in which existence and non-existence occur. Non-existence and existence. So a lot of people don't understand what the concept of non-existence is. Put it like this.
I believe that statement is true. That a lot of people do not understand non-existence. So when you say in which existence and non-existence occur, can you describe what it means for non-existence to occur?
Yes, I can. Actually, and I'm glad that you asked. You guys asked great questions. Glad that I actually called in. All right.
That's why they let me sit in this this chair.
Existence or non-existence? Let me explain this. In my work, I refer to something called an inferred polarity. That means in order for something to exist, it must have something counter it to sort of bring balance to it. So I'll put it to you like this. If you have, in order for there to be light, there must be dark. In order for there to be hot, there must be cold. There has to be something to balance it out. So when you have,
I actually disagree with that. There isn't really a thing called cold. There's various levels of heat, because heat and temperature are a description of the energy in a physical object.
You also have, so take that concept and you would apply it to a state like, let's say, water. If you have water, and you could use that in a sort of I guess a philosophical view, but it's like if you apply it to water, then you have something that is an extreme condition on the spectrum. If you apply what is cold to water, water freezes. If you apply what is hot to water, then water boils. That's a return to steam.
I have a counterpoint here. So if you mean the chemical dihydrogen oxide, H2O, right?
Okay.
And you give me an amount of this chemical. It has a temperature between 0 and I don't know whether there's an upward limit on Kelvin, between 0 and the upward limit of Kelvin on Kelvin.
Right.
That's not two things that exist. It's temperature changes and the form that we perceive it in changes. Things being hot and cold is ways in which human beings describe it. So if you want to say that human beings perceive polar opposites, yes, we don't even have to examine the theological concepts that yin and yang have for people to understand conflicting and opposing sides.
You can apply it to any physical state, though. So it's like, I'll put it to you like this: Can't you freeze metal? Can't you freeze metal and it become brittle, or certain types of metal? Or
you can super cool metal. So metal is most metals, I believe. I think all of the elements that fall under metal are solid at room temperature, which is 23 degrees centigrade, 1 atmosphere.
If you apply cold and heat to them,
you affect the strength of their physical form. But that, again, what you're talking about is a human perception of the quality of a thing. Yeah, but you're not describing a physical attribute of the thing. Something being solid is something that we can define and describe, right? And it is. I don't know.
Is this mutually exclusive of the perceiver is the question.
Is what mutually exclusive of the perceiver? Sorry.
Does the effect that heat and cold have on material values, do those effects exist mutually exclusive of the perceive? Yes or no?
The effects of various temperatures, which can be measured, is literally a one-dimensional measure. Temperature is applied to a thing. Something being super hot or super cold is a human perception based on what that human perceives as the norm temperature, which is somewhere in the middle generally.
Molten metal is a perceptive thing as opposed to
no. Us calling molten metal hot is about our perception of what hot is. Metal is molten. whether or not we perceive
well, you know
it.
what? I'll, you know what? If that makes sense, and it's like, you know what? I won't belabor the point. I will say this though. It's like going back to the original point that we were making, and me using sort of hot and cold as examples. It's like I'm sure that you could apply it to male and female. You could apply it to bonding and separation. There's space, and then there's density. There's always going to be a spectrum of things. There are going to be two things that sort of define each other in contrast to
human beings. So human beings often describe things in opposite terms like this, but that's not a quality of the object.
Well, okay, but
here. Think about it this way. Iron. We'll take iron as a solid metal. At what temperature is it hot rather than cold?
That I'm not sure of.
Precisely, because it's a perception. There is no physical quality about it that makes it hot. You can say, it has become liquid because we have a definition and a description of the physical quality of being a liquid. But to say, now it's hot, you don't have that. For example, the temperature outside, is it hot or cold? It depends on who you ask.
That's actually a very good example.
Can you pour hot iron onto any other material? And let's say, can you pour hot iron onto
what is hot iron?
Would it cause a fire?
No. So what is hot iron?
But then you're just establishing that causing a fire is what makes something hot.
Is that what makes something hot?
Not necessarily. I think that we're kind of getting into red herring territory here.
Well, no, we're defining terms.
I'm trying to get to the point that I was saying when we were talking about existence and the reality being the construct in which existence and non-existence occur. The point that I'm making as I'm showing this sort of dichotomy between male and female and the spectrum, wherein you have two polar ends, is that in order to, it's a very simple concept. In order to create existence, you would first have to be able to create and destroy non-existence. Okay.
So so hold on. So it's not really a red herring. We're going down. Sure, you can call it a rabbit trail, but it's related. You're talking about things having qualities that are necessarily polar opposites. So temperature. Do you understand why I do not believe that there are polar opposite forces when we're describing literally the singular dimension? Measure temperature of an object.
He mentioned spectrum too, though.
Is there such thing as light and dark?
Those are descriptions of the amount of light. Light being the activity of photons.
So think of light as a spectrum. There's a certain amount of light. There's none, or there's some temperature.
So, but there is an amount. There are a number of lumens in this room between photons, 0 and whatever, and there are a number of photons. Perhaps there's a mole of photons, which is 6 times 10 to the 23rd or whatever. But these are singular measures that can be measured with a singular number. The fact that we think of light and dark and day and night, those descriptions are not things that arose from an investigation of reality. They are descriptions based on human perception and experience.
I don't know that. Okay, I don't know that these are things that we can necessarily agree on, and I'll say it like this.
I think that's probably true as well.
As I've understood, I don't think that reality emerges from perception. There are things that exist.
I also don't think that reality emerges from perception. I think that perception is the result of our human minds attempting to understand reality, and that I think that describing something as male or female, forgetting for the moment that not forgetting that there are non-binary people and intersex people and people that are trans.
Non-binary people exist in like perception, but they don't necessarily exist in reality.
Non-binary people do exist in reality.
They absolutely do.
I'm not sure that us shifting.
A perceptive effect as opposed to a biological designation. Do you think that is fair?
So there's a difference between sex and gender as well.
And even if you wanted to define it on chromosomes.
Sex is what you're born, and gender is based on your how you, I guess, would identify yourself within, in and according to social norms pertaining to.
That's actually
within a given region and during a given time frame. I understand.
I think that's actually a pretty good rough summary of it. That's certainly about as sophisticated as I can get in terms of addressing sex and gender without getting a fuck ton of things wrong. But in terms of reality existing as a series of opposing forces, I don't agree that, for example, the quality of the temperature of an object is opposing forces. I think that we've belabored that point as much as we can head to head. You wanted to talk about how light and dark are opposite things, and I was saying that those are opposite descriptors as perceived by human beings.
Bonding and separation. Here's the question. Okay, so check this out. Here, we can actually kind of organize everything with this thing. There are two types of questions that people can ask. They can ask questions designed to gain understanding in order to explore, and then they can ask questions that are basically meant to defeat opposing views so as to preserve and defend their internal narratives. When you're asking questions that are designed more to defeat information that doesn't necessarily agree with you, it's like at that point it seems that you're sort of more blocking information and ideas out so as to preserve your identity, as opposed to investigating things that may or may not challenge your worldview. And
I am investigating it. So real quick here, Donald. So in the same way that you believe that to some degree at least that opposing forces make up reality, right now, our minds and the description of ideas are two opposing forces attempting to investigate and interrogate these ideas in order to come to a better understanding of them. Because the start of your statement started to sound something like, well, if you stop arguing with me, then maybe we'll agree, which may be true, but
I don't want you to agree with me. I don't want you to believe me. We just want to investigate. At the end of the day, when two intelligent people and two or three in this case, are having a rational discussion, the only thing that we can do is compare perspectives. We can't necessarily. It's not a contest to be right. It's more about trying to compare perspectives to see what makes the most sense, so that in the end, reason wins. That's ultimately what it boils down to, right?
I agree, and I think that we're doing that, and I think that it's for the benefit of the audience, which is the reason that this call continues to continue.
Right.
So.
Right. This is good. It's like I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I think so. So I need to touch on other callers, but
go for it.
I'm not sure how far you're going to get with Eric if you call in again next week. I should be on the week after that. I am happy, despite whatever the audience's feelings may be, to continue this conversation. Actually, even online, particularly if you use Reddit, r/talkheathen, just those two words is the official Reddit, and the email will be on the screen, etc. But, thank you for calling in, but I think we're going to move to the next caller. Hopefully we can continue that conversation.
You guys' time, man. You guys rock. And atheists are way better than theists, just as from my view. So I fuck with you guys.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. Hey, thanks again for your time. Have a great day, okay?
Like and subscribe.